Welcome to the AI for Kids podcast, where playtime, learning, and creating collide bit by bit. Ever wonder how your phone recognizes your face? How does a game learn to get harder as you get better? This is AI. This podcast is designed for kids like you and your human parents, making the complex world of AI easy to understand and, most importantly, fun. So are you ready to unlock the mysteries of artificial intelligence? Subscribe and join us on AI for Kids. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the AI for Kids podcast. Today, we have a really exciting guest. Please welcome Terysa Ridgeway, a computer science professional, former rocket scientist. I don't know if I can say I've ever met a rocket scientist, and definitely haven't interviewed one for the podcast, and currently a technical program manager at Google. Yes, Google.
Yes.
Terysa, can you tell us a little more about yourself and your journey?
Sure, I can absolutely start. So, I come from a very humble background in Southwest Louisiana. The name of my city is Sunset, and most people 10 miles any direction have never heard of it. So, a town of maybe 2,500 people,
Oh, wow.
a child of two educators, and the youngest of three. I've used that experience to somehow find my way in tech. I've always been very inquisitive, always lots of questions. Initially thinking that, I would go into education somehow, but I found my way back into education through my children's book series.
I absolutely love that. And speaking of education, what was your favorite subject when you were a kid? Did you always know you wanted to work in technology and science?
Well, I did not know that I did not always want to work in technology and science. However, my best subjects in school were math and science, but I
Mm.
didn't put the two together until like my high school counselor helped to guide me in the right direction.
It's always important to have those adults to help like identify those pieces for sure. Is there anything else that you were interested in when you were growing up?
I think I was just a child of like a super wild imagination,
Hmm.
kind of lollygag through life, not necessarily tying to one thing. Just like I've always been drawn to really creative things where I could kind of just let my mind wander a little bit. Um, but not necessarily like, oh, I want to go into tech. Honestly, when I was a kid, I didn't even know what tech was. So
Mm.
definitely wasn't like in the cards for me, but definitely found my way here.
Oh, I love that. And speaking of just mindset and things like that, what is a superpower that you've always wanted to have? What would it be and why?
Hmm. I would say the superpower I would always wanted to have, even like as an adult, I would say is like X-ray vision. The power to see through things and understand how they work. I think
Mhm.
it's still a little bit of that curiosity, just wanting to see how things work, whether it's like the human body or a robot or anything like that.
I absolutely love that. And one of the things that, of course, we focus on here is AI. And I often like to hear how people explain it to a kid in a way that a kid would understand. Can you explain what artificial intelligence is in a way that a kid would understand?
Very good question. Because I have children of my own, I often have these conversations pretty often. So
Oh, I
I'll
love it.
do my best. I would explain AI to a young child in a way where it's like, if you think about the human body and how your brain works, if you think
Mhm.
about the term artificial, which i.e. make means fake. So it's like I think of a fake brain is how I
Oh,
would
yeah.
explain it to a kid. It's like, okay, you have this thing as I explain what a computer does. Like a computer is not this smart machine.
Right.
Engineers make computers smart. So the same
Mhm.
thing with any type of AI. You're putting a fake brain into something and making it smart.
I love that example. And it makes it really simple to understand. And also your point of computers just don't become these smart things. There are humans behind them that are helping them get there, which is also the same thing that happens with AI. They're being trained originally by humans. And of course, they can kind of learn things on their own just by the way they're built. But with that being said, in your definition, what are some of the everyday examples of of AI that kids might use or see?
Yeah, I would say some of the examples would be like one of my favorite are like assistants. So
Okay.
if you think about Alexa or Siri or even a Google Assistant, those are everyday examples where you say, hey, to whatever your assistant
Mhm.
is, and you ask a question and they use their artificial intelligence brain to give you this information or be able to pull that together. But I would also say something very simple that I feel that most kids would identify with are things like your YouTube feed. Most kids
Mhm.
love YouTube. And if
Mhm.
you like a certain type of video, if you're into gaming and you watch 2 or 3 gaming videos, YouTube trains its brain to understand that, hey, this kid must really like games. Let's show him some more of that type of information in his feed.
I like that. I like the idea of YouTube training its brain. I've
Yeah.
never heard of it framed that way, but I think it's good framing for
Mhm.
kids to think about when they're interacting with AI in tools like YouTube and gaming. Like, I just love that answer. The other thing that's just really exciting to talk to you about is that you have had a very exciting career. And for young people listening, like, I know when I was young, like there was an idea of being a rocket scientist, and that's something people would talk about, not necessarily knowing if they were going to do that. But now, like with where we are in space and things like that's a job where people are really excited about again. So you went from being a rocket scientist to working at Google. Can you share a bit about your journey and how AI played a role in it?
Of course. So initially, as I mentioned before, both of my parents are educators.
Hmm.
And if I'm being completely honest, on my maternal and paternal side, my families are filled with educators. Like I have 13 female cousins on my paternal side, and every
Wow.
last one of them are in the education field. My oldest sister was also an educator. So it's like that was all I knew. I did well in my math and sciences. So I initially went to college to become a math teacher, to return
Wow.
to my local area and teach the kids in my local area, like some of the things that I was really good at and that I could teach them, right?
Hmm.
Well, it was in my second semester of college where I had to take a computer science class as part of the math curriculum.
Okay.
And at the time, I didn't really understand what computer science was, but this was also in the heyday of like MySpace and Black Planet
Ah,
and things
yeah.
like that. So I had been setting up and writing HTML code for my MySpace page. I always
Same.
like to have my diamonds dripping in the background, my music playing, and all of those things, but not understanding that all of that was actually intro to coding. And it's
Yeah.
like troubleshooting, going to different websites, like how do I make my picture scroll?
Right.
That was all like what a software engineer does in their day-to-day role. And I was like really shocked by, okay, so people make money for doing this type of stuff, and this could be a job, and like you retire and like you're really good after doing this. And
Right.
I was like, and in that moment, I just talked to my mom. I was like, I thought I wanted to be an educator, but it's like, I think this is a better fit for me. She was very supportive of it. Because I had taken some math courses already, I was
Mhm.
able to use some of those credits and get a math minor and still get my computer science degree.
Wow, that's amazing. Like, I love that story. I'm gonna have you explain a couple of words. So you said paternal, maternal. What does that
Okay.
mean?
Okay. So paternal means on my father's side. So
Mhm.
that's my family that is related to my dad. So that's his sisters, his brothers, and their children, which are my cousins. And
Mhm.
then on my maternal side, which would be my mother's side and her siblings and their children. So that's my family on that side. So both sides of my family are filled with educators.
Oh, I love it. And then another one, definitely in my heyday, like when you said MySpace and Black Planet, I like went back to my life where I was also coding in HTML and making sure my page looked great. But
Yeah.
kids may not know what MySpace and Black Planet are. What are
Mhm.
those?
So, if you're familiar with any type of social media of now, I would say like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, even YouTube, you think about where you go for your own profile, not necessarily your feed, but your own profile. The
Mhm.
cool thing about my heyday or when I was a kid is that you were able to customize
Oh
or
yeah.
make your profile as individualized as you want it. So, of course, you have your profile picture, but they had really cool things like you could change your background, you could change music, you could add scrolling images, you could place videos there. It was more of I guess it tied into my skill set of being a creative, and you
Mhm.
could just make your profile as creative as you want, and not every two profiles were ever the same. I'm sure you could agree to that. I don't think I ever saw two
Yeah.
profiles that were, except maybe what was I could see his face. Mark. Is it Mark?
Mark's.
Yeah.
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 Mark was the creator of MySpace for
Yeah.
kids listening in. But one thing you said that I just realized I miss in current social media is the ability to make the space your own. Because now, other than your feed you can make it your own, but like your profile where that sits, it was just cool being able to do those cool things like you said, and even being able to learn how to do simple HTML and using that language to make sure you had a page that looked different. So yeah, you just brought me back for sure. But I love the
And
explanation.
yeah. And the cool thing about that too is I have a teenage daughter who of course loves TikTok. And I had a similar conversation with her too, where I feel like during our generation, it was more about how individualized you can be. But here it's like, okay, whatever is the most popular dance, who can also do that same exact dance? So it's like, I don't know if it's necessarily stifling their creativity, but I felt that we had more of an outlet than they do.
Yeah, something's happening there for sure. Because even we have a new book coming out later this year, and the book is called "Let Kids Be Kids, Not Robots." Because I feel like we've gotten so like programmed to behave a certain way that we're like restricting kids in that creativity. But I didn't even realize until you said right now that literally social media right now, including even for us adults, like we're basically mimicking what is happening, and you actually get more credit or more praise or being recognized if you are doing the same thing. So that's really interesting. Hopefully someone does research on this, because I really want to learn more about this now.
Yeah.
So are you ready to play a quick game?
I think so. I like games, but I'm kind of nervous. Let's go.
Okay. I think you're going to do fine. If not, the good thing is we're going to learn together. It's called Tech Trivia, and I'm going to ask you a few questions about technology and AI, and you have to try to answer as quickly as possible. Kids at home, as you know, you can also play along. So are you ready?
I am ready.
This one is a question that has multiple answers, so I'll start with the easier one. What is a popular voice assistant that uses AI?
Google Assistant, which is my favorite. I have kind of a smart home here, so that's my favorite.
Oh, nice. I love it. And you said it earlier, so I was like, oh, she's fine. She'll get this one for sure. And plus, it's everywhere, like you said.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one, I have to be very specific about how I asked this question because it could have different answers. So, what was the name of the first digitally operated and programmable robot ever created?
I don't think I know this one. Digitally robot. Yeah, I don't think I know this one. I know about the first computer, but not necessarily robots. So I'm interested.
And I thought about that after the fact. I was like, I should have asked about the first computer because of your book. I failed on that. So sorry, kids, for not making that more aligned. But the name of the robot, I'm probably going to destroy its name, is Unimate. And it was created in 1954. It's UNIMATE. The crazy thing is when you Google this device, it was doing things like pouring coffee and stuff. So it was interesting that even back then there was this idea of robots, but then now we're fast forwarding to now what it looks like to think about robots in a way. I'm shocked they didn't keep up or get in the house more like George Jetson and that type of thing.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm going to have to look into it. But it's interesting how things do things like that. Like it'll come out, nobody really is interested. They wait about 10 to 20 years and they do the same thing and it goes crazy.
Oh yeah. I was in LA a few years ago. I mean, we went to the car museum and there was a whole section of like all these electric cars. And I was like, wait, we tried this literally decades ago and it didn't go anywhere. But there's like all these electric cars that were released like literally over 40 years ago. So it was just interesting, like you said, to see how sometimes the stuff cycles back around.
Yep.
All right. Are you ready for our last question?
Last question. I'm ready.
Okay. So what was the name of the first computer virus?
I know this one. It's like a Creeper.
Yes.
Creeper. Yeah.
Creeper. And it was a program that basically a person sent over through ARPANET, which the ARPANET was before our version of the internet. It was called ARPANET. And the person sent over, "I'm the creeper, catch me if you can." That was the first computer virus.
Yeah.
Also really weird, but If they want to be the creeper, I guess.
Yeah. And it was named after a Scooby-Doo character or something like that. It was like something
Oh, I
that
didn't
we
know
had
that.
to do in college. Yeah. Creeper.
Cool. I did not know that. Thank you for
Yep.
sharing that. I learned
Yep.
something new today. Thank you. So let's shift gears a bit. So you're also a best-selling author of the STEM-based children's book series, Terysa, Terysa Solves It. What inspired you to write these books?
So I've always, like I mentioned, I'm always been like a creative. I consider myself to be a bit of a storyteller, not
Mm,
necessarily a writer. I like
okay.
telling stories, and even with my own children, they're always interested to know how things were in the
Right.
1900s. Like, what did you do? What did you do before cell phones? Like, they can't imagine a world like, okay, so you didn't have a computer, you didn't have a tablet. Like, tell me all about the 1900s.
Oh, that's so
Okay,
stressful.
gather around, kids. Let's talk 1900s, right? But
Right.
it was during the pandemic when like things were very slow. I feel like that's when like my creative juices were like all time high.
Mm,
And I was telling them different stories and they really were intrigued. Like sometimes my stories, especially with my own kids, are hit or miss.
okay.
Because sometimes I get too excited and sometimes it's just, I don't know, their minds are all over the place. But they really were interested in like, okay, you didn't have a computer. So like, what did you do when you were bored? Kind of thing. And I
Okay.
told them the story about the very first time that I saw a computer, which to
Mm,
me it was just like it's just the first time I saw a computer. But for them, I realized I could see in all of their faces how interested they were in that. So I used that kind of as a basis of a story, made it a little bit more fictional, some real life elements in it, um, and created this story. And if I'm being fully transparent, I had also recently lost my mom, so I was
I'm
in this
sorry.
in this area where I was just like, I need to keep my mind busy.
Yeah.
And it was the opportunity to write this story about my childhood, include my family there in a
Mm,
world where we still existed together.
mm.
So, and it was my mom who introduced me to computers. So I
Oh, wow.
used that as like the basis of the first story in the series, where it's like I'm getting the computer for the first time and I'm trying to figure out what to do with it. And then as the series goes on, I do a little bit more and a little bit more.
I absolutely love that. And also sorry to hear about your mom. And just it's beautiful that you're able to continue her story and her legacy through these books that are literally reaching tens of thousands of kids, if not more. I don't know if y'all broke over 100,000 yet, but I know y'all are getting
Almost
up there.
really
Am-
close.
Amazing work. Amazing work.
Thank you.
Why do you think it's important for kids to know about AI and how it works, or even about computers and how they work? Because that's the foundational part of all this.
Yeah. I feel that as much as I say, like, even I wouldn't necessarily call them the TikTok generation, but just like the difference in generations between us is that the cool thing I feel about them is that they're super interested in technology. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel that when I was around their age, it was like more like the nerds and like people weren't necessarily interested. So I feel like when the computer wave first hit, it was only a certain type of people that were interested in it.
True.
And then I feel the second wave was when social media started with like the MySpace and things like that. And
Mhm.
then like we started to kind of catch on, but it was, I mean, computers had been around for a while before people had started to catch on.
That's
And
so
I
true.
feel like AI is the next wave. There are things that I kind of feel that, you know, kind of come and go, but I feel like AI is here to stay. And I feel that it's very important for children to at least understand. You don't necessarily have to be a software engineer or rocket scientist. You just
Right.
have to be curious enough to understand the technology because it truly is the wave of the future. And you don't want to get left behind on that one.
That's such a good point. And that's one of the reasons why I want to talk about this stuff for kids is that I don't want kids to be left behind. And I do believe it's something that's going to change all of our lives. I think it's already starting to change our lives, how we work, how we think. Like a lot of people say, the next 10 years, we don't know what the jobs are. Like we can't predict for the first time what the
Yep.
jobs are going to be. So we want to make sure kids are ready. How do your books help kids learn about STEM, computers, and or AI?
So I prefer to go the storytelling route.
Hmm.
I do plan to do more activity-based learning, but I feel that for a certain group of readers, little girls that look like me, They want
Mhm.
something that's relatable. So I start with very simple concepts of like just being inquisitive. Like I was the nosy little kid, like, okay, get out of the kitchen. The adults are talking. Okay.
Right.
I'm I'm still here, just naturally curious. And I feel that that's a great skill set to have for an engineer, but you don't normally see kids that look like me being engineers. So it's like
Mhm.
just tying those two together has been a great thing for the children's book series, because now little girls that look like the character, and I have the book here, little
Love
girls that
it.
look
I was
like
gonna
the
ask you to pull it up.
character.
Thank you.
Yeah, like even from down from her ponytails to like
Oh,
her
yeah.
fluffy socks and things like that, just to show that, we all can be engineers. It's not like a certain type of person that can do that. So like I said, I go the storytelling route.
Mhm.
In the first book, it's the day before the character's 8th birthday, and she's picking up all of these clues from everybody is just being so weird around her. Her mom is hanging up the phone as soon as she enters the room. Her dad is doing weird things, and it's just like, what is going on? And she's figuring out somebody must be planning a surprise birthday party for her. And it's like even just simple concepts like that, I tie
Mhm.
into problem solving. The character gets a surprise and she tries to figure out how to get it to work.
I absolutely love it. And I love the fact that you're using storytelling as a way to do that because one, kids are like, that's how they learn. And I think adults learn like that as well. But I think it's just important to help kids get the concepts early, like you said, around problem solving. And even as you were talking about it, literally she's thinking like a computer to be able to solve this problem or solve the scenario that's around her. I absolutely love how you set this book up and how you continue to build out these series. What are some other ways kids can start learning about things like AI, computers, or even create their own projects?
Very nice. So, there are a few online resources that I highly recommend for
Okay.
my children. I specifically started them with Scratch Junior
Mhm.
and Scratch, which is block-based programming, which takes away a lot of the things that I find that I wouldn't necessarily say frustrate kids, but I,
Okay.
I feel that it could be a limitation, which is syntax.
Mm.
Something as
Mm,
simple
mhm.
as a colon or a
True.
bracket could throw an entire program off. So I feel
Yeah.
like block-based programming is a great introduction because
Okay.
it gets rid of that. And it's like it teaches you about logic and sequence and things like that. And in addition to Scratch and Scratch Junior, my two oldest children, I was able to, sit them down on a computer, start
Mhm.
doing lessons. They knew they were learning something. Of course, they picked it up because I'm their mom, right?
Right.
But I would say for my younger two, I didn't go
Mhm.
that route.
Okay.
I had already started my children's book series, and a
Mm.
lot of the teachers and parents were with children that were very interested, wanted to know like what's next. Like, okay, they're interested. How do I keep that interest
Oh,
going?
yeah.
So I worked with this company named Alilo, where there's a little coding
Ah!
robot where the kids can literally program it using a few different methods. You can use the buttons at the top to like
I
move.
bought my niece one of those
Oh, you
for her
did.
birthday. Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you. So you can use it to the arrows to make it move a certain direction, which is basically an algorithm. So what an
Ah,
algorithm does is it gives a specific set of instructions for a computer to follow. These are specific instructions that your computer, the robot, will follow. So I say children as young as 3 years old can pick this up. And as soon as you give it to them, they'll start pressing buttons. And I find that that's the best way to learn. Like 3 years old, start coding. Okay. As you get a little bit older, I have a set of puzzle pieces where it also has a set of instructions.
oh,
So,
yeah.
what children do is they build a puzzle path for the robot to follow. If they build it correctly, it'll follow along and it'll give them some positive reinforcement. If it's incorrect, it'll let them know that and then they troubleshoot and they fix the path. And then the most advanced one is I have a mobile app as well available on
Oh,
the
I didn't know that.
Amazon store. Yeah,
Okay.
it's only for Android
Ah,
currently.
got it. I'm an
But
iPhone.
yeah, I'm trying to figure out something.
Totally
Working on
get
a
it.
few other things, but I'm definitely trying to get it for iPhone. That's the biggest request. But using the same block-based program that I mentioned from Scratch and Scratch
Mhm.
Junior is built on that same framework where you can literally use block-based programming to control your robot. You can use voice commands using AI, and you could use like just literally your finger and draw a path, and it'll follow.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
One, can you tell the audience two things? When did you start this?
Start the series, the
The
robot,
company, everything.
everything. It's been in my head for a very long time. Pen to paper, 2020. Yeah, right at the beginning of the pandemic. I started writing in 2019,
Uh-huh.
formalized like my LLC and those business types of things in 2020.
That is so amazing. And kids, I just wanted to say the timing because she's 4 years in and she's created not only a book series, we're going to talk about some of the other things in a few minutes, a robot, PJs, like there are things that you can literally wear associated with this, but she did this in a very quick amount of time in reality. And I know for kids, that may be your whole entire life at this point, but that's a very short amount of time that she's been able to do such amazing things. And then can you talk a little bit about just any other projects you're working on right now that you're really excited about?
I would say the one that I'm most excited about right now is like just continuing to build that brand and introducing kids to computer science and them
Mhm.
being excited about it. I recently launched animated series on YouTube
Oh yeah.
where you'll see the character. I would say in real life, but not necessarily. Like she's moving around, she's talking, she's doing activities, and she's also inviting the little viewers along with her on the journey. So if you have a robot, you can follow along on the journey with her.
I absolutely love it. And make sure you all check that out. We will have everything that was mentioned today in the show notes. So make sure you work with your parents to look at that. If you want to see the book, the robot, or any of that, make sure you go from the audio to the YouTube because we have visuals of everything that Terysa just talked about. And I want to make sure you see it. So, how can kids get involved and learn more about computers, AI, and all these different things that are coming to them as they're growing up?
I would say there are a lot of really great companies, and I'm glad that it's being more diversified in how kids are learning. I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
that it's starting in the school systems now. You can go to your local Walmart and Targets and find STEM related activities. Some of my favorites, of course, my kids love your book. By the way, like they
Oh,
love
thank
it,
you.
absolutely love it, and they're at the point where they're reading it on their own now. So it's like, okay, I read it myself a few times, and I say few lightly. It's been over 20, but now they're reading it on their own. So that's a great
That's
thing.
awesome. That's the
Yeah.
goal. Sorry, parents.
Yeah, they're so into it. And I know you're asking me a question, but I was just very impressed with the way, like after I read it and I saw that it was developed using AI, like I feel like I have an AI eye, right? But
Uh-huh.
I did not like I literally like it was so like beautifully
So
made.
only
So
one picture
kudos
was
to you.
with AI. That confuses
Oh,
people at the end. So that was the inspiration. But no,
okay.
that was developed by a human. So you were right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
I
it was
was
just
like,
the one
this is
picture was
great.
like the inspiration because I was playing around in Mid Journey and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so cool. And I talk about AI for adults before this. And
Yeah.
I was like, adults, we're a little bit harder to adapt to new things. So
Yep.
I was like, let me just play around with this. And it created this character. And I was like, I need to talk about this for kids. And I have my nieces and nephew. At the time, my nephew wasn't born, but now he is. And he's in the world. He just had his 1 year birthday. I
Oh,
wanted them to move from just being on these tablets and devices or saying, hey, Siri, hey, Google, or whatever, to like
yep.
understanding these technologies and being able to interact with them. But you are right. AI wasn't used, it was just used as an inspiration. So I put the image in there for that. So I
Okay.
used
Okay.
real human, real writing, and all that stuff.
Beautiful, beautiful book. Kudos to you. It's truly a beautiful book and beautiful
Thank
story
you.
too. We really loved it. It almost felt like a movie when I read it the first time. Um,
That's the goal.
yeah, it definitely felt that way. Beautiful STEM books, lots of wonderful STEM authors that I'm starting to get to meet. STEM educational toys, which is where I'm kind of teetering. I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of my passion is kind of being driven there now. Like every now and then I'll have like a creative idea and it's like, okay, I need to get this in a book. Like I'm working on 3 new books right now,
Oh, wow, that's
but it's
amazing.
like, but I'm also working on toys and they both give me different types of excitement.
Mhm.
So yeah.
I feel you on that. Even like, I know this is not about me, but really quickly, since you opened the door for 5 seconds, I'm gonna take the 5 seconds. The book I've actually never mentioned on the podcast, so I'll mention it here today, which is crazy. But we have a book called AI Meets AI, and to your point, one thing I love about this space is the ability to be creative. Like my day job I focus on data, so that is very logical, and of course, there are ways to be creative in that very logical part of my brain. But the creative part around like doing stuff for kids really excites me. So I definitely resonate with that and definitely understand where you're coming from there. And the want to create other new things that go along with it. It just allows you to you get the education bug where you want to help teach people and train people. You get the creative bug. Like there's so many things that are happening when you're able to create. And I appreciate you sharing that because I definitely resonate.
Yeah, absolutely. That's 100% where I am. Like I need the balance of using both sides of my brain.
Oh, yes. Kids, learn now.
Yeah.
So, we're going to do something fun to learn more about you. It's called Two Truths and a Dream. So, I want you to tell us about 2 interesting facts about either your career or your life and one dream you've had since you were a kid. And we'll try to guess which one is the dream. And, kids, as usual, make sure you're guessing at home as well. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Go for it. And I'll try to guess. Try to
Okay.
stay away from your bio, but we'll still see.
Okay. The first item is I aspired to be an astronaut.
Okay.
The second one is I'm a mother of 4.
Okay.
And the third one is I worked on a technology that is in space currently.
Oh, wow. Okay. So first was aspired to be an astronaut. Second was mother of 4. And then third is worked on a technology that is currently in space right now.
Yeah.
All those things are very good. So kids, make sure you're thinking about the interview and using some of your problem solving reasoning to figure out which ones are the facts and which ones are the dream. I'm going to start with the first one, which was you wanted to be an astronaut. Because you were a rocket scientist, that could be possible. So I'm going to leave that one to the side for now. For the second one, you're the mother of 4. I did listen. You never said your mother of 4, but I did listen to the fact that you had 2 older kids and 2 younger kids. So I'm going to say that is a fact. So I'm going to move on from that one and put that in the fact box. And then the last one is you have a technology that is in space right now. Because you were a rocket scientist, that is also possibly true. Oh, this is hard. Kids, make sure you're thinking about it and thinking about the dream. Feel free to shout it out. I'm going to say the astronaut is the dream.
You are absolutely correct.
Woo! Okay, but back up. What technology do you have in space? That is so cool. I was actually like, I'm like, is that real? I don't know. It seems so far out there that I didn't know. Oh my gosh, it's so
Yeah.
cool.
So it's like, so I geek out. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's like the really cool thing that I worked on very early on in my career that is still being used to this day. And this is like 20 years old at this point. It's
Okay.
something called a towed decoy, where it's like it can be placed in rockets, it could be placed in missiles, it could be placed
Okay.
in satellites. In this example, it's placed in a satellite where it's you want to prevent the bad guys from reverse engineering your technology. So it's
Mm-hmm.
somewhat of a scrambler where it's like you can't just tap into it and figure out what cool technologies are inside. And I was
Wow.
able to work on that right out of college.
One, this interview has been great. And the fact that you've done all these cool things, that is so amazing. Thank you for that because you're contributing to making our world safer. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you for sharing that story. Before we go, do you have any advice for kids who are interested in learning more about AI, computers, and how it can be used to help people?
I do. I would say stay curious because if you're interested now, that means you're very curious. So
Mm,
keep that up. Keep looking, keep digging, keep finding every tidbit of information that you can and stay curious.
I love that. The funny thing is, I think every interview everyone says something about curiosity somewhere in the interview. So that for me has been like the thing where I'm like, oh, wow, it's really around this idea of asking those questions. And I really appreciate you for calling that out. Is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners?
The only thing I would like to share is if you would like to connect with me on social media across all platforms, you can find me at Terysa Solves It, Terysa Solves It. And that's on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, everywhere. You can find me there.
I love it. And we'll make sure to drop it in the show notes, kids. So make sure you work with your parents to get those resources and follow her on all the different websites. Thank you so much for joining us today, Terysa. And thank you all to all the listeners who are continuing to listen in. Don't forget to subscribe to AI for Kids and stay curious. Thank you for joining us as we explored the fascinating world of artificial intelligence. Don't keep this adventure to yourself. Download it, share it with your friends, and let everyone else in on the fun. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. See you next time on AI for Kids.